Hey, welcome to the Inspiration Podcast with Stan. It's season 3, and I'm Stan Gibson. And if you're here, you already know this isn't just another leadership show. This is about one thing: living and leading with intention at work and at home and in every room you walk into. So each episode, we're going to pull back the curtain on what separates the top 2%, the leaders who are clear on their purpose, powerful in their relationships, fully alive, mind, body, and soul. Hey, grab a drink. Get comfortable. Let's get into this. Hey, I'm Stan Gibson, and this is the Inspiration Podcast. Let's get to it. Hey, welcome to the Inspiration Podcast with Stan. Hey, great to have you here today. This is episode number 21, and I'm pretty excited. I took a little bit, maybe a couple of months off. I was kind of rethinking a little bit about just the platform and coming at you with just some even better, if that can happen, podcast. I had some just unbelievable guests in the first 20 episodes. And as you know, if you've been listening to the Inspiration Podcast with Stan, I typically do a few solo casts where it's just you and me, just talking. And then I'll have some really amazing guests. And today it's a solo cast. Today I want to talk to you about something that it's really what my whole platform is built on, and that's intentionality. I just believe so much in intentionality. I will tell you that the greatest leaders, the greatest progress in life is done with intention. I want to give you a little bit of a story just to start today off. I want to talk to you about a client that I had probably about two years ago, and the intentionality that this person went through. And I'm going to give him a first name. I'm going to call him Mike. But I tell you what, when we first started working, Mike was a little skeptical. Mike had never invested in himself. He'd never invested time. He felt, as a leader, as an executive, I can do this. I've got this. I can, I should be able to figure out, a lot of the issues in my life. But he came to me more in desperation. He had taken a pretty big setback at work, been passed over for a promotion. And this is a guy that's an executive level, very executive. And he'd been passed over. They brought somebody in from the outside, totally devastated him. And it just rocked his world. And after about 8 months, this person didn't work out. They came back and said, you know what? I think we made a mistake. And we should have put you in that position. So now that they put him in the position, he started looking around. He's saying, am I really qualified? Am I really doing all the things with intention that I need to do as a leader? And this is an amazing story. So hang with me here. Because we started looking at his ability to lead. And we noticed right away several things. Number one, as a leader, he was enabling. He wasn't coaching the people that were reporting to him. He was enabling. And so they were wandering aimlessly or unintentional. And it wasn't until we created an intentional, I don't want to say job description, but we created intention around his leadership style. And the next thing we didn't only just create leadership in intentionality around the people that reported to him. We created intentionality with his peers. How was he dealing with his peers? And then we created intentionality managing up, because there was a new CEO in the company. And this CEO really liked Mike a lot and trusted Mike. And so Mike had to learn how to help her excel, because her ascension would lead to his ascension. Now, Mike has some pretty big dreams. Mike doesn't want to continue to be an executive vice president. Mike wants to be CEO somewhere. And we started working with intentionality. What might this location look like? Do you want to be CEO in the market you're in? Are you open to somewhere else in the United States? And he was very specific. I want to be a CEO in Florida. I want to eventually be in Florida. I like Florida. It's where I want to be. It's the lifestyle I like. I would like to be a CEO in Florida. That's very specific and very intentional. And so we started working on a lot of things. We started working on Mike's health, his well-being, the intentionality around his well-being, because we want him to have extreme energy. I wanted him to have so much energy that when he wakes up in the morning, he's lowering his cortisol, which is fear. He's pumping up his dopamine, his serotonin. He's pumping up something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF is the acronym, which basically is like a car wash for your brain cells. I wanted Mike starting off the day with so much intention, so much energy that nothing was going to stop him. I wanted him to start leading and coaching, not just leading, but coaching with intentionality. I wanted him to start not only coaching the people that reported to him, but also coaching sideways and coaching up, because coaches are what people are looking for in today's world of leadership. They're looking for people to help coach. So we went through probably about, I'm going to say, a year, and really started to see just everything at work. I mean, he was like absolutely hitting on all cylinders. And lo and behold, a job came up. Not just a job, the job, a CEO position in Florida, major market, and Mike applied. And Mike was shortlisted. So now we had a whole new set of intentionality. We had to start looking at how do we prepare, because we had already went through, Mike and I had already went through extreme amounts of self-awareness. We did a lot of psychometric assessments and testings. Mike knew who Mike was at his core. Mike had a better understanding of his genius, his core strengths, and his kryptonite than he ever had in his life. And so I made the suggestion, let's go into the interviews stating just your confidence in who you are and who you're not. Let's be open. Let's be honest. Let's let them know that you are not just a regular executive that walks in and says, hey, I'm qualified and here's all the accolades that I've done. No, go in and tell them exactly how you, as an executive, have positioned yourself in the upper 1 or 2%, how you've positioned the people that report to you in the upper 1 or 2%. And then we can get around to talking about all the things you've done in the community and all the things you've done in your job. But that can come secondarily or even tertiary. That can come down the road. But let's talk about the fact that you have self-awareness and self-command of your leadership, your style. You know what you do best, and you know who you need to surround yourself with. Let's also talk about the interviews you're going to have, because for this position, and again, CEO position, so he was going to be interviewing with some very high level people like the owner of the Tampa Bay Rays. I mean, just, big, people that were very astute and affluent in the community. And so we coached around the intentionality, and I'm going to keep coming around to that word a lot, intentionality. We coached around the intentionality of those conversations and what those would look like and how we would address them. And we also talked a lot about listening more than talking and how that became a strength, because a lot of times in interviews we get in and we just want to start talking and selling ourselves. And a lot of times it's the person across the table. If you can ask killer questions and go in with great questions, it just becomes a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to show that you're really a good listener and that you have thought about things at a very high level. Everybody that comes in an interview, they're just going to start talking, but you're going to be different. You're going to be the one that comes in and has the ability to start asking killer questions. So anyway, let's fast forward. Mike gets the job. Mike now is CEO. And he's able to take all this brilliance that he had amassed in his previous job, come in, because this job kind of had a low bar set. Major market. And now he's able to incorporate all the things that he knew and take it to a whole new level. But again, Mike did it with intentionality. Mike did it by focusing on his own well-being, his own leadership style. He started coaching versus enabling. He started asking better questions. He went through a lot of self-awareness. Mike had intentionality around his life, 100%. He knew where he wanted to go, geographically, the position he wanted. He had specificity. And that's what I work with. When I work with clients, we work with that specificity. Once you can get clarity around what you want, then we have the ability to start to create intentionality to get there. And your brain will do an amazing job, everybody. Your brain will take you a long way there. And it does take work. It isn't just think it and it'll happen. But having that specificity, your brain now starts to work in your favor versus working out of fear. In fact, I'm going to give you just a couple of 3 or 4, maybe 5 statistics that I think are going to blow your mind. But we make 70% of our decisions daily based out of fear. That little almond-shaped piece in the back of your brain called the amygdala, which is fight or flight, we let it take over. And, we've been told things since the earliest we start to pick up memories and thoughts and what people tell us is between 3 and 4 years old. And we amass just millions of pieces and bits of information over the years that become reality to us. And you know what? The amygdala can help us. It can be a great thing because, it can, increase your heart rate and tell you to run and to do all the things when you're being chased by a bear or a tiger. But let's be realistic. When's the last time you were chased by a bear or a tiger? We catastrophize a lot of things in our life. We operate 70% of the time based out of fear. And so, that's one reason that we need to have intentionality is because we need to lower what's called cortisol. Cortisol is the, it's the part of the brain that basically, that's why we work out in the, I say the morning. It's why we work out. It's why we're active. It's why we take care of our bodies, because the more we are active, it lowers cortisol. And we can start out with less fear. That's why I work out in the morning, because I just like starting off my day, just wiping fear clear of the day and getting started with no fear. 60% of our decisions are made on autopilot. 60% of our decisions are made on autopilot. Think about your own life. I always say tomorrow starts tonight. Next week starts this week. Next month starts this month. How intentional are you? And how much in autopilot are you? Think about your diet. Think about your exercise. Think about everything that you do during the day. If it's not written down and it's not intentional, if it's not a routine, a strong routine, you're living on autopilot. And I say 60%. Some of you, it may be 70 or 80%. Some of you, it may be less. But for the most part, most people are, again, they're just going through and drifting. I always love the book by Viktor Frankl, where he talks about Satan loves a drifter. I mean, people that drift through life, that's perfect. And again, whether you're religious or not, but I'm just saying this is a great book because he talks about Satan loves a drifter. And so anyway, I 60% of your time is unintentional. And that's where we drift. That's where we drift. There's stats right now that say that 33%, or let's put it another way, let's put it the negative way, 67% of people are not thriving. They don't believe they're thriving. Only a third, 1 out of every 3 people say that, hey, they're hitting on all cylinders. 2/3 say they're not. 2/3 say they're not. And, 66% of people don't even have a written plan. They don't have any idea where they're going the next 12 months, the next 60 months. That's 66% of people don't have a vision for their life. And, I have a strong belief. That, this podcast isn't for everybody. This podcast is probably, there's 2 to 5% of you out there that will say, you know what, that's right. I need intentionality in my life. And not only do I need intentionality, I'm willing to invest the time. Because I'll tell you what, when I take teams, I do group coaching and I do individual coaching, masterminds. When I work with these people, it's great conversations, but there's work to be done. You cannot get anywhere just based on name it and claim it. You think it and it's going to happen. That's part of the story, but it takes a lot of work. And there's only about 2 to 5% of the people that say, you know what, I want to live a life with intentionality. I'm only on earth for so long in life. And I want to live with that intentionality, and I'm willing to pay the price. I'm willing to pay the price. When I was 23 years old, I was just, a country bumpkin, and I was in Dallas, and I had my first job, and I was through no fault of my own. I really wasn't. I was put on probation. I was put on a 30-day probation. I was either going to lose my job or keep my job. I had no idea what I did wrong. But I do remember going back to my apartment. I remember crying my eyes out. And I remember taking out a piece of paper and saying, here are the things I'm going to accomplish over the next 3 years. I don't care if I've got to pay for it. I don't care if I can get my organization to pay for it. I don't care what it's going to take. But here are the credentials I'm going to get. Here are the hours that I'm going to work. Here are the intentional steps I'm going to take. If I'm not X by 12 months, I'm going to pivot and do Y. At 23, I didn't know that I was doing what I would be doing for a living, 4 decades later. But I had that intentionality, and it worked out very well. That intentionality, I did get the credentials. I did make some pivots. I did everything that I think unknowingly, but intentionally, that I needed to do. And it worked out very well. And so I've always kept that thought with me, is that intentionality early on is what served me well. And it's what serves my clients well, having that intentionality. And another thing is, 3 out of 4 adults live with at least one chronic illness. 3 out of 4, 75% of people live with at least one chronic illness related to lifestyle. So what we're eating, what we're doing, even the digital dementia that we have, being on our phone all the time, it's causing chronic illness. And so we've got to be intentional about everything we do. We've got to have this intention throughout the day. And, this happens in everybody. But I would say one other stat, and I'll leave the stats alone, is that 75% of millennials are struggling to find direction. 3 out of 4 millennials. I'm having more and more conversations right now with existing clients and just saying, hey, do you know anybody else that, needs to go from chaos to clarity? And, they'll put out a few messages and the responses are overwhelming. I mean, they're overwhelming. People are saying, oh my God, I have no direction in my life. I'm a hot mess. I need, I work with 2 types of clients, quite honestly. I work with either those that, are willing to put in the work and really realize they may need to pivot, but the goalpost keeps getting moved on them in life, personally, professionally, everything. And they say, I need intentionality. Or I work with other people that are knocking it out of the park, but they say, you know what, there's more left in the tank. I want to be intentional and leave an even bigger mark on the world. And so those are typically the people that find me and the people that I work with, and especially in group coaching, working with high-level executives. These are typically, they fall in one of these 2 camps. So I want you to think about intentionality. And the platform that I have, I will never call it a program, but it's a journey. And it's a journey that is based on 3 things. It's a journey that is heavily, heavily based on self-awareness. There's a lot of emotional intelligence that we need to work with up front to know who you are, who you're not. We need to go into the depths of knowing how you face fear, how you face stress. Where are you strong? Not what's wrong. Where are you strong? And how do we put you in, I always call it the Michael Phelps, Katie Ledecky swim lane, to where if the freestyle is your event, you're going to win every race. There's not even going to be a question. I don't care if it's by 5/100,000ths of a second. You're going to win. But what about the other lanes? What if the butterfly isn't your jam? What if, some of the other events? How do you surround yourself with other people where they're going to win and they co-elevate you? That's why I have masterminds, is to co-elevate with people that can support one another, and they're all the best in their swim lane. So that is the first thing, is self-awareness and emotional intelligence. And then we go into some 5-year visioning. And when I say visioning, it's not a place to get to, it's a place to come from. I try to have my clients think about, what does nirvana look like 5 years out? And then, we have some very specific questions, some customized questions that make you think about, how did you get there? What were the relationships you needed to create? What was the well-being that you needed, and the habits and the routines? What were some of the bigger breaks that you had, that you manufactured over time, that got you to this success and this intentionality? And so, once we go through some tremendous visioning, then we get into the hard part. And this is, okay, how do you want to show up? How do you want to show up in your career, your finances? How do you want to show up in, purpose? And sometimes purpose is spirituality. And I'll work with you whether you want spirituality, whether you want purpose. But how do you want to show up? What is the intentionality that you want there? What about your mindset? What about the relationships, the key relationships in your life? A spouse, a significant other, your children, your peers, at work. How do you want to show up? And so we go through some neuroscience in creating some statements that will stick in your brain. It's called the reticular activating system. And it's a way to filter what goes into the prefrontal cortex, or the part of the brain that really has logic. And it takes work. But we start to get into some very specific statements about how you want to show up. And then what is the work that's required to make it happen? And that always starts with, therefore I must. Therefore I must do what? Not I'm going to give it a shot. No. Therefore I must. In the next 90 days, I need to do these 3 to 5 things that are going to either give me a healthier mindset, better relationships. They're going to boost my career, my finances. You have to have this intentionality and the work that comes with it. And then another kind of side piece to this is doing some either creating some quotes, famous quotes, or even scripture, if that's your jam. And how does that tie back into the work you're doing and the way you're showing up? So it's a very specific plan. It's a very specific journey that I take people on. And once you do all this, then obviously you've got to put it in your planner. You've got to say, what's the most important thing I'm going to do this week to move the needle and do the things that will create this intentionality and create these results. My life has flourished. I will tell you what, having done this and this whole plan, it isn't just putting it in your calendar. It's also recording it. I listen to it before I get out of bed every morning. I listen to it on my recorder. It takes between 12 to 13 minutes, but I listen to my identity, how I'm going to show up. And then it morphs into the things that I must do over the next 90 days and some quotes or scripture. But I listen to that. And some days I read it, and I read it out loud because there's neuroscience that backs up reading it in your voice out loud versus just reading it and skimming over it. But so I get into a whole neuroscience of this. But I tell you what, if you want to live with intentionality, if intentionality is your jam, then you're going to succeed. And if this is something that you just want to know more about, reach out to me, leadwithstan.com, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think the big thing is I just love my why. Somebody, I was on a call the other day with a prospect, and she asked me, she said, why do you do what you do? You don't have to do this. I mean, you can kind of fade off into the sunset. And I said, no. I said, my why is helping you find your why. My why is helping you and others find your why. And it's what strikes the dopamine in me. It's what strikes the serotonin in me. It's what the oxytocin, everything, all the neurotransmitters just wire and fire when I'm seeing other people go through transformation. It's just a beautiful thing. And it's God's wiring for me. And so giving it to you it's the pleasure of my life. So anyway, I want you to think about intentionality. And all of my solo cast, they're going to be around intentionality. We're going to be talking about some other success stories. We're going to be talking and going into more depth about each of the areas that I just talked to you about emotional intelligence. We're going to go into more depth about, the science around journaling and what's called the servo mechanism and why this is so important. But we're going to be really always talking about intentionality. And then when I have guests on, we're going to be talking about their inspiration and their intentionality as well. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed today. I hope that, you took away something about intentionality and that you're starting to think about, I want to be part of that 2 to 5%. I want to be part of that group that says, you know what, I'm tired of drifting. I'm tired of drifting. I will drift no longer, and I'm going to take control of my life. I want to know where I'm going. I want to create these relationships, these phenomenal relationships with my significant other, with my kids, with my children. I want to create these relationships, at work, because where we go isn't just on the professional side, but it's also on the personal side. I always say, if you're not doing well at work, it's going to transfer to your home life. You're not going to be doing well there. And if you're not doing well at home, it's going to transfer over to work. And you're always going to be thinking about, something going on with the spouse or kids or whatever. So we got to get that right. So anyway, thank you for listening today. I really appreciate it. I can't wait for the next episode. And I tell you what, may you all live a rich and intentional life. Take care.
Well, that's it for today, my friends. I hope this conversation sparked something meaningful for you. If it did, share it with someone who could use a little inspiration too. You can find more tools, stories, and coaching to support your journey at stangibsonspeaks.com.